Uh, all right. That's a good moment to start the show. Hey everyone, this is Business Pants. I'm Damian Rollis. That's Matt Mascardi. This is Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. A very special United States Impeachment Day episode. Hey Matt.
There's nothing says fun like impeachment hearings.
Yeah. Why can't I hear the music, Matt?
Well, I faded it out. This is a professional
Oh,
operation.
yeah. I didn't hear it, and then my buzzer went off because I'm an idiot. So
You didn't hear it at all? Oh, it was so good.
not really. Not really. Um. All right.
what, what do we got?
I'm happy to see everyone. Thanks for listening, everybody. This is, as I said, this is Business Pants. We are Free Float Media. This is a daily look at business news in an unsucky way.
I love that tagline.
A little bit of fun, a little bit of irreverence, but always purely fact based, with actual research. Right? I mean,
We should be
this
clear.
is real shit.
Yeah.
We sound idiotic. I know I sound and look like a fool, but all of this is completely fact based. None of it's made up. Right, Matt?
It is. And we should be clear
Yeah.
that a lot of the time the
Yep.
things that we're talking about are so absurd we don't I mean we're not always serious about the absurdity of it, right? Can we just say that for the record?
Well, yeah. I think here's the idea: is that we worked a combined, over 2 decades, in the corporate world, right? And we weren't allowed to have any fun with this stuff. We weren't allowed to have a sense of humor, so we had to bust out. We had
So we bought one.
yes.
What's on the agenda today?
All right. Today, oh
Got the music now, don't you?
no, I don't hear anything.
Oh, well, it's grooving. Just trust me.
Okay, all right, okay. Today, oh yeah, let's look at the agenda. I like it. I always forget the agenda. We have this is a bit of a weird show today, Matt. We're gonna and it's basically it's because of the U.S. impeachment going on that I thought, like, instead of having a normal type of show, why don't we just throw a bunch of biz nuggets at people, a bunch of food for thought right at the top. It's lunchtime. I, as usual, am starving. So I thought let's just go over a bunch of shit, have some fun with it, and then we're gonna do something a little more like nerdy today. We're gonna get our nerd on today. We're gonna dive right inside the pants, and we're gonna talk about the industry that we come from and that we live in, because people ask about it, they're confused about it, they scratch their heads about it.
You're talking about ESG.
Yeah, I'm talking about ESG. So I didn't want to say it. And then we're going to end the show with another Matt Makes, the third installment of Matt. What's it called? Matt Finds a Job?
Yeah, I am making my way onto a board.
Okay. All right, I'm ready, Matt.
Let's
go.
So that's our day. Okay. The harp is played.
Okay. Hey, I don't hear it today. It's fine.
It's a win for you.
The harp is in my head. Trust me. Today, on our special impeachment edition of Business Pants, I want to get straight to the num-nums, direct to the yum-yums. Let's eat some biz nuggets, everybody.
You're like Boomer on an NFL replay show.
Well, I've noticed that I've been steadily increasing my coffee intake as part of my pre-production, and this is what's happening.
Have a granola bar. Jeez.
No, this is who I am right now. I have to go with it. Let's start our first nugget: big data banking. Facebook on Tuesday launched a new payment service called Facebook Pay that will operate across its family of apps, and at the same time, Google plans to offer checking accounts next year. Is this bye-bye banks, Matt?
They're just setting up the infrastructure for Libra for when they take over the world and become the largest central bank in the world. Facebook, right?
Yeah, Google too, though, right? If you didn't understand it to this point, listenership, this is the future, right?
Just imagine with the
Get used to it.
with the healthcare purchase that the regulators are now looking at Google for, because Google wants all your health data. They bought Fitbit. They imagine opening a checking account at Google. They can see every search term, every time you search for your lumpy testicle or your, I don't know, do you get a lumpy vagina? That's not a thing. Every time you search for some health issue on Google, write a check to a doctor. They know your heartbeat on the way. What don't they know at some point? Between Facebook and Google, everything.
Maybe they can automate it and they can just buy things for you.
Oh, so much better.
And the next story, there's an interesting tidbit in this next story here, so that relates to this. Our next nugget, to wrap up Alibaba's huge $38 billion Singles Day haul, I just wanted to point out a few nuggets. The first one is that 7 of the biggest grocers were U.S. brands, each making more than $150 million. This includes Bose, Estee Lauder, Gap, Levi's, Nike, the North Face, Apple. So, so much for the U.S.-China Cold War, right? I mean, I can tell you which side that U.S. corporations are going to be on. But the more interesting point here, the more interesting fact, which relates to our first story, is that in music to the ears of Facebook Pay and the Google Piggy Bank, 90% of sales on Singles Day in China happened via a smartphone. Can you believe
Wow.
that? 90%. 90%. So the infrastructure is set up. I mean, it's genius. I mean, they've completely set up the infrastructure to have all these payments go right through the apps.
What percentage of those people were probably in the store, a physical store, looking at the item and then just bought it?
Minus 4%.
I do that all the time. Are you kidding me?
You buy things from the store?
Yeah, you go to the store, and then you realize it's like $50 in the store, and on Amazon it's 6 cents.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're better than us.
Well, I'm about to be on a board, so that will be true.
Nike will stop selling its clothes and shoes directly to Amazon. So, can we make a streaming wars analogy here? Is this like pulling The Office from Netflix? Do we have a new war, Matt?
Oh, that would be amazing. Shoe sale war.
Well, I mean, no, seriously, though. I mean, Nike, think about it. Nike, which is obviously one of the biggest, most important retail brands in the world, is pulling all of its products from Amazon. So how is this different from, NBC pulling The Office from Netflix? What's the difference?
So is it going to be that you have to go to Nike to actually buy their shoes?
You have to crawl to Nike in Nike branded knee pads.
If I'm wearing Adidas when I get there, do they promptly throw me out?
Well, they rip off the Adidas and they rebrand you with your Facebook Pay smart glasses. The next story, U.S. senators are worried about the Army's use of TikTok for recruitment purposes. Yes, you heard that right. China is coming for your smart toaster. So isn't that crazy? They're recruiting on TikTok while the government is scared about
look,
TikTok?
You go where the people are.
Oh, it's nuts. There's no coordination of anything.
It's not. Is it that surprising? None of this is that surprising.
I want to be surprised, Matt. It's the caffeine. Elon Musk blames Brexit for his decision to build the new Tesla factory in Germany instead of the UK. So, can we make a streaming wars analogy here? Is this like pulling The Office from Netflix? Do we have a new war, Matt? Wait. Is China coming for your smart toaster? I got my notes screwed up. I don't know what's going on. Is this the same thing?
No. The short answer is no. But doesn't it sort of always made sense to build the cars in Germany where every other car gets built, right? Like they do it very well in Germany.
My real question here is this like a Elon FU to the Brexiteers, or do you think there really was a legitimate reason? I don't know.
No, but I did jump into a Twitter war between Elon Musk and David Einhorn, an activist investor.
Good for you.
And was ignored. So I was instrumental.
Follow Matt Moscardi on Twitter, people.
At Matt Moscardi. Follow me not getting listened to.
At Free Float Media too, if you're game. Our next nugget: freedom of speech. Facebook is on the defensive after it was revealed that its head of news co-founded a website critical of Elizabeth Warren. But it's just a platform, right, Matt? Just an empty vessel of American ingenuity, right, Matt?
So
and China is coming.
You do have to lay off the caffeine.
Sorry. Yeah.
I do have a question about this.
Yeah.
Like, is there a point at which if you scrutinized anyone, could you find some deep conflict of interests somewhere in their past for everybody?
Of course, but again, we're not talking about anyone. We're talking about Facebook, right? I mean, we're talking about the company that pleaded for freedom of speech and that they're just a platform, and while they're also starting a news platform where they're picking news stories.
It sounds a little bit. I don't want to throw fire here. Are you siding with the sort of conservative talking point that that they get edited out of all these news feeds? That's why they had a whole social media summit with 0 social media companies at it.
I'm siding with every viewpoint, Matt, because I'm trying to boost our audience ship.
That's
all right.
It's meaningless for you.
Let's do some sad nuggets. Let's do some environmental climate crisis news. First one is the financial cost of historic and severe flooding in Venice is likely to run to hundreds of millions of euros. And the Netherlands will cut its nationwide speed limit as part of a package of emergency measures intended to reduce nitrogen pollution. Any thoughts there, Matt?
I'm not sad about reducing someone's speed limit. And I've been to Venice.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone in the summer?
I actually went. I went this last summer for the first time ever.
It does not smell great.
Well, how dare you? What does smell great?
New York in the summer is even worse.
A nice warm piss wafting through the air. Finally, our last nugget. The U.S. Supreme Court will allow Sandy Hook families to move forward in a lawsuit against gunmaker Remington. I'm not C.K. Lewis. I don't have a portfolio of school shooting jokes. So what do you think, Matt?
Well, you also haven't exposed your genitals anywhere. So
no, not recently.
You mean Louis C.K. or C.K. Lewis?
Oh, Louis C.K. Lewis.
See,
I am. There is something wrong with me.
And Lewis Carroll and
is there a C.K. Lewis? There is now. I do have a librarian degree, so I would put the last name first. So I just saved myself. Let's get out of here. Let's jump out of Biz Nuggets. All right, let's sober up. Let's get a little bit more serious. Let's go inside the pants.
The harp has been played. Get inside the pants.
I missed it. All right, I'm gonna start the clock.
You are a shit show today.
I know.
Congratulations.
Okay, so I struggled a little bit about how to introduce this, and here's where I settled: is that it's complicated, right? That's the answer.
That's your status?
Yeah. So that's the answer to the question, what the hell is ESG? All right. This is what I've been getting all my life. First, it was what the hell is corporate governance. Now it's what the hell is ESG. So instead of like coming up with some pithy way to describe it, which is not going to work and no one's going to remember, this is what I'm going to do today is introduce a series of conversations on the topic, right? Because this is not something that can be wrapped up in one segment, in one show, in one soundbite. This is something that people, even inside the ESG industry, still struggle with, which is really their identity and how to talk about it. So let's just talk about it, Matt. Ready?
Yeah, hit me with what you got.
All right. So Matt Levine over at Bloomberg, one of our favorite writers here at Free Float Media, had an article the other day which started out with this premise, and I'm just going to read it, and then we're going to talk about it. So have a muffin, Matt, because it's going to take me at least 18 seconds, and I know you get bored easily. But
I'm already looking out the window. I don't know what you just said.
All right. Here's from Matt Levine. What I should do is launch the Money Stuff S&P ESG Fund, a mutual fund whose stated mission would be to invest in the 500 companies in the S&P 500 index with the best environmental, social, and governance ratings judged by my own rating system. So why would investors want this? Well, as far as I can tell, investors want two things: to be told that they're investing in environmentally, socially, and governance conscious companies, and to own the S&P 500. So what the hell is Matt talking about, Matt?
All right. So this is a really simple concept. That's incredibly complicated. Okay.
Right. And again, this is why we're just going to talk about it, frequently, because we want people to understand this stuff.
So look, ESG is effectively, I mean, you can shorthand it the way Levine, the kind that Levine is talking about, which Levine is a genius. You're going to read his stuff. You should sign up to his mailing list because it's great. He's talking about, the shorthand is, what happens if climate change floods your facilities and your company loses all its factories or whatever? Can you model that? There is a version of ESG that's very, very much focused on that. Okay. But people are buying ESG for all sorts of reasons, because they don't like tobacco. They don't like, they like solar panels. They buy it for every kind of like environmentally related or social justice-y related or anything that kind of lumps together. So part of the big problem that he's talking about is funds know they can sell a product if they put ESG in the name.
Okay, you're right. It's like going to the supermarket and seeing the word natural on every chicken
Exactly.
package, even though there's actually no USDA definition of the word natural when it comes to food products.
Exactly. And like
Right.
you can slap an organic thing on it, you can call something, and people will buy it just because it's got that title. ESG is that in asset management right now. And pension funds, massive pension funds, the pension funds that run your 401ks or your retirement plans, they are looking at ESG and they're trying to understand it, and they're trying to change their benchmarks. But think about this. You put ESG in the title of your fund, just like you put natural on your food.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens if it tastes shitty? Right? You'll never sell it again.
Okay.
If you're the equivalent, if you're an asset manager or a pension fund, is what happens if you underperform for some reason, for any reason, the market. If you underperform the market, you are out of a job. So what's safe? You put the ESG title in the name, and then you make it perform exactly like the market. It's a concept called tracking error. So I don't want to bore the shit out of you.
No, please don't.
But tracking error is effectively the ability of an asset manager or a pension fund or an index provider to limit the difference between whatever it is with the natural, title on it and the index it was built off of. So S&P 500, S&P ESG 500.
So is it deception? It doesn't make sense to me. It sounds like it's a game.
It's rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. Like, you're still on the Titanic. You are still just going to get whatever the market gives you. But you get to say that this chair arrangement is more efficient, more carbon efficient, or better for the environment.
It always sounds like two things. It sounds like a marketing exercise, and it sounds like potentially something that will eventually dilute the potential power of anything ESG, because it.
But here's the problem. Right? It is. Those things are true. But it's also true that no one will buy it if it's not that.
Okay.
Because if you it's career. I mean, like the people think of like asset management and investing as like some mathematical equation that you plug in and everyone's efficient and but there's real career people could lose their job if their portfolio doesn't do as well as the market does. And if that's your incentive, your individual incentive.
Yeah. Well, that's sad to me. You're making me sad.
But that's true. And actually, shout out to Bill Burkhart from TIP, TIIP. They do some interesting work. I was at a meeting at the Fed in San Francisco with their group and a bunch of other asset managers and pension funds, like everybody, you've heard of them, right? And the big thing that came up, I was the one person from an index provider in the room. This is when we worked for the mothership. The big thing that came up was this problem, tracking error.
Okay.
It was, what is ESG if we keep buying shit that is just the market rearranged to give us the market?
Yeah.
No one has solved this until someone is willing to step out and say, we're going to do it totally differently. We want to buy the future market, the one that's underwater. We want to know who's going to survive it.
Right.
And we want to buy that now.
Yeah, so there's another article out, I think today in Forbes, and he's talking about a fund where he has the most widely held ESG stocks, and it's a list of 50 funds, and he's saying it's beating the S&P 500 by 45% this year. And I look at the list, and it's companies like J.P. Morgan, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Black & Decker. And I'm like, what the hell is this? These are ESG companies?
Yeah, this is the other problem.
Yeah.
That there's some perception that there's like a single ESG-ness of a company.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Well,
like
maybe.
So,
yeah.
So imagine you are a utility, an electric utility. You give electricity to people. Your one plant is actually on the coast of North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You have on your board all independent, all super smart, all amazing people. Your shareholders have all these rights. You are doing an amazing job hiring people. You have the best retention of any company in the world. But 5 years from now, your plant is underwater. Are you a good ESG company or a bad ESG company?
Well, that's the question, right?
That's the question, and that's the one that no one really can answer. There's no one's been able to settle. When you see Merck, they're good at something. When you see Johnson & Johnson, they're good at something. It's not baby powder with asbestos in it.
We got to get out of this. We got to get out of our pants. But can I just say, this is one of the reasons why I always hated at my previous position, we did something where we weighted each sector, right? So we would have high-rated companies in each sector relative to their cousins, to their brothers and sisters within the sector, right? Are you with me? So you could be a horrible company that should never be considered an ESG stock, but it was outperforming its peers, so it was rated high because of that. I thought that was stupid. Sorry. All right.
Tell me how you really feel.
I know what? I still think it's stupid. I think there's something just vaguely weird and wrong about it. Anyway, as you can see, we're over time. This is a conversation that's going to keep giving. I'm sure we lost a lot of you in the middle there. It's confusing.
Are you saying I'm not compelling?
I'm saying that people don't understand asset manager and tracking stock, and not all the people.
Tracking error, not tracking stock, fool.
See, exactly. Like, this is a lot of your jargon doesn't work. Okay,
all right, get a granola bar. Let's go.
And can I just say that once again, my next topic, which was women in leadership, women's equity holdings at startup companies, was mansplained out of the show. So I'm shelving this for tomorrow's show. We'll get to it because it's good stuff, but we're not going to have time for it today. All right. So skip it.
Here we go.
Yeah. Let's just jump right over to Matt Makes. Today is part 3 of Put Matt on a Board. Is that where we're at?
Matt makes himself a board position. We are on part 3. So this is if you didn't catch yesterday's show or the last week's show, I basically yesterday I found 16 companies out of 2,400 where I might have a shot of getting on their boards. I used a bunch of criteria covering the fact that I'm basically a white male, age 40, with limited experience doing much of anything, who doesn't want to work that hard, but wants to get paid and wants to have infinite job security. I am the definition of a potential board member.
Okay.
So, so I got myself down to 16 companies, and I'm calling them
Okay.
the Sweet 16. So we're down to these Sweet 16
Part
companies.
3, the Sweet 16. Let's do it.
So, and shout out to James McRitchie who responded on LinkedIn, who questioned some of the criteria getting to the Sweet 16. We'll come back to that at another point because I really need to think about his points. But the Sweet 16 are basically, if you're on the live stream, you can see them now, or you're watching on the video, you can see them now. There's no real rhyme or reason to them, except that they are very manly sounding company for the most part. Like Exelon sounds manly and tough.
So does Masco.
Masco, yeah. Stanley Black and Decker, Waste Management, Hess Corporation, Thermo Fisher. These are big companies. Corning, Exelon, and Chubb Limited. Chubb is an insurance company. Have the largest boards. So 14 members of their board. So that's a good place to start, right?
Okay, yeah,
that's a pretty big board.
You can really get lost in the back of the classroom. Yeah.
But I wanted to take a macro view of just the 16 to start, and I wanted to start with effectively manliness quotient and a whiteness quotient. Now, right, because
favorite things.
Because those just fit me, right? Like those are what I am. I'm a white male. Okay, so this is not an indictment of non-white males. It is just simply I am trying to get on a board, and it's surprisingly easy to when you're a white male. But let's up the ante and get to the whitest malest ones. So from a macro view, what stood out to me was Fidelity National Financial, which is a title insurance company. Not like Fidelity, like, when you think Fidelity Investments, not them. It's a different company, yep. Fidelity National Financial. 90% of their board is dudes. And to understand whether or not they were white, it felt really racist and awkward to like look at a picture and be like, yeah, well, most white, not white. So I didn't do that at all. This is a probability that they're white based on their name, their first name from U.S. Census data. So I'm definitely overstating whiteness, but it's fun and ridiculous. So I'm doing it anyway. But Fidelity National Financial stood out. They are very manly and very potentially white. The second tier here, close second, is either Cisco Systems or Leggett & Platt. So Cisco Systems was about 83% men and 85% probably white. Leggett & Platt was 80% men and 89% probably white. So,
To be fair, looking at this chart that you created, most of these boards look pretty white and male.
So to be fair, well, this was part of my original criteria. So this is like a gut check for me. And
that's true.
Now we're kind of splitting hairs. Like, how extra white and male are these boards? But there's more that I wanted to get to.
Keep moving forward there.
We'll keep moving forward. Because I wanted to move into basically board tenure. And outside board. So what I looked at for the board members of these 16 companies was how long do they stay on the board, and how many other boards are they on? Because if they're on a lot of other boards, they probably won't pay attention to me very much. And
they're probably sleepy.
If they've been there a long time, do they really care if I do anything? It's hard to know, right?
They don't want you to do anything.
They probably don't want much in the way of change, so I can just be quiet and forgotten.
Exactly.
So again, Fidelity National Financial is this is
the winner. Yeah.
This is blue ribbon material. The average non-management board member at Fidelity National Financial has been on the board for 14 years. That's an average.
Yeah.
That's like when I took the lows and the highs, I put them all together, made an average. 14 years. That means there's people above that, which is nuts to me. Leggett & Platt also coming in second here. So we're starting to see some patterns.
To put that into context, in the UK, if you're on the board for at least 10 years, you are no longer considered independent.
True. That is right. You are no longer independent. So not so much in the U.S., but
But that tells you how long that is. But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
and you'll also notice that most board members at all Sweet 16, with the exception of Thermo Fisher, the most board members on average are on 2 boards at least. The highest being Holly Frontier, but Holly Frontier I axed for other reasons. They just don't fit the profile. So let's move on to.
Doesn't sound manly either.
I actually, while I was digging into these people, like how long they've been there and all this stuff, I realized like I have zero expertise in literally anything these companies do. Like Leggett and Platt makes parts and beds. I've never made a bed except for IKEA. Right? Okay.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is I wanted to know, do I need to know anything about what they do to be on the board?
I know the answer to this one.
Damien, you will not be shocked. The answer is absolutely not. I do not need to know anything about what the company actually does to be on the board. Now, in fairness,
typically you need to know somebody to get you on the board.
In fairness,
that's a fact-based response. I mean, I worked in this area. A large percentage of these people do not have any industry knowledge at all.
I mean, in fairness, if you were like a banker and you got on the board, at least I mean, like these people know about business. They know about it generally.
Oh, sure. We all know about business.
They all have business pants they put on. But my absolute favorite here is like Leggett and Platt. Again, with Leggett and Platt coming up, one person on the 10-person board has any industry experience whatsoever. Okay, so congratulations to that person. But then it occurred to me as I'm going through this that the board members on these Sweet 16, are they also board members on other Sweet 16 companies?
Okay.
Because here I am digging into like what their experience is and whether or not the companies have, too many, any openings for white men or whatever. And I realized, wait, some of them may actually sit on multiple boards. And here's the shocking answer. Yes, 5 board members on the Sweet 16, on boards of the Sweet 16, also sit actively as board members on other companies in the Sweet 16.
That's nuts.
The 5. Yeah. Now, you can't, if you're listening to this as a podcast right now, you can't see these 5 members. I pulled their pictures. The most amazing part about this, in some sort of bizarro twist, is that it is literally all of the diversity of the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
There is one old white guy, and then it's a white woman, a black woman, and 2 black men.
Yeah, I mean, the cynic would suggest that these companies are trying to meet some sort of artificial diversity quota, and they don't really actually care about diversity.
I don't. I mean, like, but only from their own, from each other. Like, it's just a very weird coincidence to me.
There have been suggestions in studies that a lot of the directors who represent a diversified population sit on a lot of other boards because other companies are kind of borrowing their services, right? I mean, that sounds terrible, but that's the suggestion.
So I just focused in on these 5 people because, first of all, if the boards are generally so white anyway, maybe there's a shot that I can just oppose some diversity because they don't really care about it, clearly, given the other board members. So turns out that none of these people have industry experience. So good. That's perfect.
Shocker.
They don't have any industry experience on the companies in which they're on the boards. Turns out that they sit on more than the average board member.
Right, exactly.
So Sheila Talton is the only one who sat on 3 boards. The other 4 sat on 4 boards. Okay. And last but not least, and this is how I was able to identify the one I should potentially target.
Okay.
Phoebe Wood. I have
Phoebe Wood.
nothing against you, Phoebe Wood. I'm really glad for your service. You've been on the board of Leggett and Platt for 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
And on average, the shareholders who have voted for you have 4% less confidence in you. They voted 94.8% in favor of you, where for the others it was more like 98, 99% in favor of them. So,
right, which sounds high, but it's actually pretty significantly low for this context.
so in this context, that's actually relatively meaningful.
Yeah.
Phoebe, you're already on the board of PP&L Corporation, an electric utility. You've been on the board at Leggett & Platt for 13 years. Leggett & Platt basically ticks all my boxes. I mean, they require no industry expertise whatsoever. They really have long board tenures, which is great for me. They're pretty white and they are pretty, manly. So Leggett & Platt, I'm looking at you as my starting point.
Okay.
To potentially depose Phoebe Wood.
That's just terrible. You're terrible. You had 5 people to target. One of them was a white man, an old white man, and you had to go after poor Phoebe.
Leggett and Platt is a better.
Terrible.
It is honestly. This has been the most eye-opening in how insulated. White can't a white 40-something just get a chance, Damien?
All right, you're way over your time. I'm embarrassed to report. Let's answer that question tomorrow, because I think you're going to need another segment to wrap all this crap up. I want you to succinctly summarize this all tomorrow. Okay?
I don't know. I'm going to need another 20 minutes.
That's all we have time for. We designed the show to be short today so that I could get to my sandwich.
I would say full success.
But of course, one of the longest we've ever done. So thank you, man. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.
Subscribe to Business Pants. I'll talk to you tomorrow.